The following video will explain how to manage your caseload once your study has started. So once you have participants in the study and you're ready to go, you will mostly live in this Manage Participants tab. And so it's good to know how to quickly find people and how to maximize filtering. So the first thing that you'll notice is that there's this filters button. And this is really great because you can filter by a particular participant. So if I wanted to filter by 244, I could do that. And I can do more than one, so I can also filter by 245. And then I would click filter, and just those participants would show up. And if you clicked show participant's name, you could search by their name, like John Smith, and that would come up as well. You can also filter by arm. So if you're enrolling and you want to see how many participants you have in each arm, you can filter by just arm. As well as status. So this is again really helpful if you want to see how many people are in the enrollment process. So that would be new, enrolling, ready usually. You could filter by that. And then this could be helpful if you're trying to do follow-ups with participants to move them along in the enrollment process. You can quickly see who that is. You can also filter for anyone who is ineligible. So if they were screened out, we don't have any here, but they would show up if they answered something on their screening survey that made them ineligible for the study. And then you can also search for just started, which is helpful once you have completed enrollment. And then finally, you can filter by different enrollment steps. So if you're trying to follow up with participants on the step that they're stuck on, you can filter by this. So if they didn't complete it or completed it, you can enter in those various filters, and that will bring up all the participants who are stuck at that particular step. And then you'll notice that there's various columns here on the Manage Participants page, and these can actually be edited, so you can decide what you want shown here. So like, let's say you only have a one-arm study. You obviously are not going to need this arm, so if you want to get rid of that, you can put in a JIRA help ticket, and I can get rid of that for you. So if you see something here that just seems messy, sometimes people think that they don't need to see the incidents, we can hide that as well. And then another cooler thing that Way to Health now has is what we call the adherence snapshot. So if we look at this program, it's a bidirectional text messaging. We can see quickly patients are supposed to text in their morning and afternoon blood pressures, and we can see with red-green adherence whether they did that or not, and quickly see what they texted in. So 138/85. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, you put in a JIRA help ticket with which encounters you want in the adherence snapshot. So that would be something like daily step count or daily medication adherence, or anything with bidirectional text messaging if you want that. And then another thing that you can do from this Manage Participants main page is you can do batch actions. So you can batch start people, you can batch finish if you're trying to clean up your study at the end. The send notification can be really helpful. So let's say devices are not currently working and you want to send a message to all started participants letting them know, just a heads up, you can do send notification, and you can type in a message and it will go out to all the participants that you have listed there instead of having to do it on an individual level. And it will go via their notification preference. And then finally, this is a quick way to put in an incident for a particular person. So for 248, if I just wanted to say like patient is in the hospital or something and create an incident so I have a note of it, I can quickly do that. So then another tab that you'll probably live in is the Filter Encounters tab. This is particularly useful for reapplying feedback. So let's pull up a started participant. Let me find one. So let's say, since I'm not sure which arm, 248 and 254. Let's see for them. And I'm just going to look for their daily lottery. Great, so for 248, let's say that, this is a walking study and their step counts came over late, so you want to rerun the lottery for them. You can go ahead and do that here. So you would just select the days that you needed to rerun the lottery. And then you would go down here and you would apply feedback and click go. And it would resend that lottery messaging to them, and it would account for that those new steps that came over late. And you can also choose like a particular date range. So instead of seeing every single date, you could pick, September 1st and through September 3rd. And this is really helpful if a patient is in the hospital or goes on vacation. And you need to rerun everything, you can quickly do that here and apply feedback. And again, it will press go and it will send out the updated lottery messaging to the participant. Okay. And then the next tab that you're going to use a lot is the Transactions tab. So this is where you're going to go to approve study payments. We usually try to do this on no more frequently than a 2-week basis. So what you'll do is you're going to go to Filters, and once you have a lot of payments for your study, this is going to be important because otherwise this is going to get really messy. You'll go to Approved and No, and you're going to want to filter for that. And then it's going to show up all the payments that have not yet been approved. So then I'm going to select all the payments. And we usually just kind of try to spot check, way to help make sure that there are no duplicate payments. But again, it's always good to do a little spot check and make sure that everything looks right. And then you're going to click Approve and Go. And once you do that, you're going to have a check mark in the approved column, green checks. And then if you check back tomorrow, there will be a green check mark in the processed column, which means that Wells Fargo processed the payment and the transaction and sent out a check to the participant, as well as sent them a message for the amount of their check. If it is a manual payment, there will be a green check in this box, and those can only be approved by project managers. So you have to have project manager status. Otherwise, Way to Health will give you an error message and tell you that you don't have the proper permissions. So sometimes it's a little bit confusing about the difference between transactions and payments. As you can see over here, they sound kind of like the same thing. So transactions are the what are generated by Way to Health. So that can be anything from a lottery winning to payment for enrolling to payment for completing a weigh-in or a survey, etc. And then a payment is basically a check. So that can include multiple transactions. So a payment will have a check number associated with it, and it can include multiple lottery winnings and a survey completion, for example. And this is where you'll go to the payments tab if a participant reaches out about not receiving a check, and there is a separate video to explain the process on how to handle that. Okay, so then the next place you're going to go is sometimes is manage data. And manage data is really great because you can filter for device data and survey data live. So one of the limitations of the reports is that they are only generated once per day, but managed data is as soon as we get it. In Way to Health, it shows up here. So I can filter, for example, Fitbit. And if I want to filter for a particular participant, I'm going to filter for 248. And this can be really helpful if you're troubleshooting a device. Because look, when we filter for 248, we see, we haven't received any data since 10/17 and it's 11/11. So clearly something's going on. This participant hasn't synced their Fitbit since 10/17. And again, this can be really helpful when you're troubleshooting with participants. You'll also notice this attached to encounter column. So there aren't any here, but if we go to page 3, we can see what step count attached for that day. So if a participant has multiple data points, if they sync multiple times, they might have, multiple updates for their steps, and then you can see exactly which one attached to which encounter. And then we can also filter for surveys. So if you're trying to filter, let's say the screening survey, and you can see responses here, they are coded, so you do have to know that. But you can, if you go to the surveys tab under manage study, you can see what these equate to. But let's say a participant accidentally answers a screening survey question incorrectly. If you are a project manager, you have the ability to go in and edit this survey. So let's say this response was a yes/no question, and this should have been a 2. You can go ahead and edit that response here, and you just want to put an incident or an explanation as to what happened. This is usually pretty rare, but it's nice to have that option. Okay. And then another thing that you're probably going to encounter if you're using some sort of device is device troubleshooting. So again, the first thing that you'll want to do is check the device website. If you're using a device that has an external website, to see if data is coming over into that website, because if there's nothing on their end, then it's not a Way to Health issue. It's something external to Way to Health, so that's always the first point. And then the second thing to do is, again, look in manage data. So we would filter for Fitbit here and see what's happening and see the last time that we received data. If everything looks good there, or we saw before so let's filter again for 248. Again, we see, we haven't gotten anything since 10/17. Let's go look more in depth at this participant. So we're going to go to the Manage Participants tab. And let's look at 2 participants with 2 different scenarios. So we're going to look at 7/17 and 8/20. I'm going to filter for them. Uh-oh. Great. So first we'll go to 717. Okay. So when we're in their profile, we're going to go over to their devices tab and see what's going on with their device. So here gives you a snapshot. So they have potentially have three devices, and we need to look at the Fitbit because that's the one that they're using. So we can see here that that Way to Health last attempted to download data on 11/11, so that would be today, but we haven't received data since 10/17. So that either means that A, the participant hasn't synced, or B, that there's some issue with the connection between Way to Health and the device. And from this, we can see the device state is unstable, which usually indicates that there's some issue with the authorization. So what is normally recommended is to reset the device. So you'll go to this pencil icon, you'll click Reset API Data, and the participant will log into their front-end dashboard, and they're going to reauthorize Way to Health to collect their step count data, and a card will appear on the overview tab of their dashboard, and it will ask them to reauthorize. So anytime it says unstable, definitely recommend just having them reauthorize, and that usually does the trick, and then the data will usually come over. When a device is working properly, it will look something like this. When you go to the Devices tab, you'll see the device state is listed as working. The last download attempt was today at about 1, and the last datum was today at about 1. And a telltale sign is this big green box on the device telling you that it is working and everything looks good. Finally, we have an option to look at what we call an inbox view. So let's look at this particular study. So I'm going to go into the participant profile, and I'm going to come over here to this inbox tab. And here you can basically see the quote-unquote conversation that the participant and Way to Health are having. This is particularly helpful for bidirectional SMS studies. You can see what Way to Health is sending the participant. Please send the blood pressure, and then you can see their response and the conversation back and forth. So Way to Health is in blue, the participant is in green, and then any incidents created are in red in the middle here. This can be really helpful for troubleshooting or to see, the conversation with the participant. But even if you're not using bidirectional text messaging, this can also be helpful. And that is how you manage your Way to Health caseload.